Alrighty, so we are now winding down in terms of the Leagues Cup action, and with the way that the final is approaching and the semifinal is gonna happen tomorrow, I'm gonna get a chance to kind of talk about the league itself, and that once MLS is back, it's gonna be pretty crazy of how fast the home stretch is, and most of these teams, of course, only have 9 games left to play. Some team, of course, have more. Some team, of course, have less. But one thing I want to talk about in today's video related to us coming back from the Leagues Cup break is the Eastern Conference playoff race, because the Eastern Conference playoff race is pretty crazy right now, with the way that between eighth all the way down to the bottom of the standings, only separated by 7 points, and even the team that is at the very bottom of the standing, that is the New England Revolution, even though they might be at 23 points, they have 2 games in hand. So theoretically, if they can win those 2 games in hand, they could actually propel themselves all the way up to ninth place and get into the playoffs. So yeah, it is definitely wild, and that I want to look at all these teams, and whether or not even talk about can they of course make it into the playoffs. And of course, I stop at between 8th all the way to 15, because after that, the teams that's currently in 7 all the way up is a little bit further than this jumble of a mess that we have in terms of the Eastern Conference playoff race. So let's start by talking about the 2 teams that, if the playoffs, of course, started today. These are the 2 teams that will be facing against each other in the wild card round, and it's going to be Toronto versus Atlanta United. And both of these teams couldn't have kind of opposite in terms of expectation heading into this season. For Toronto, this would just exceed every expectation. This is supposed to be a team that supposed to be a nail to the wooden spoon race, but somehow, in some way, John Herman has completely overachieved in terms of how TFC have played. And while yes, these last month or so, they have definitely regressed back to the mean. The fact that they're still in the playoff race right now is nothing short of a miracle. I mean, at this point, I'm pretty sure every TFC fans will feel like this season should be done, and they're already looking forward to the future. But yeah, this year it's been a pleasant surprise again, partially due to the fact that it feels like those 2 Italians started to kind of give a damn in terms of playing, but also there are some good young players that stepped up for this TFC team, and some flashes of potential core pieces that they can have as they still in the midst of this deep rebuild and this kind of deep cleaning in terms of the mess that the last regime have left. But currently they have a 9-3-14 record. They have 30 points. They scored 34 goals this season, but they're giving up a lot of goals. 47 goals have allowed. They have a minus 13 goal differential. Again, a lot of the goals allowed have came really in the last month or two when they started to regress back to the mean. The defense that was actually really solid at the beginning of the season, yeah, lately it's kind of gone back to what we saw last season, where last season the defense was absolutely horrendous, and now we're seeing it again, even in Leeds Cup too. I mean, in the game against Miami, I know that it is against Miami, and I know they don't have Messi and stuff like that, but still they still gave up 4 goals in that one, and it was pretty bad of how they were defending. But in terms of their remaining schedule, well, the first game they play is not going to be easy. They have to go on the road to play against the Houston Dynamo before playing against DC United. That could be a big game, considering they're one of the team that is fighting for those playoff position. Then they got Austin at home before they have Columbus at home before they go on the road to play against Colorado. That shouldn't be easy either. And then they play against Chicago, which that could be a big playoff 6 pointer depending on where both of these teams are in the standings. And then they finish the season both at home with them playing at home against the Red Bulls, and then playing at home against Inter Miami. And it's one thing I also want to mention about TFC is that they do not have a game on decision day. So obviously, with the way that we're still in terms of odd numbers in terms of teams, there's going to be always one team that's going to be left out in terms of decision day. TFC, of course, is that team that gets left out on decision day, and we'll see whether or not if we're going to have a similar situation what we saw last year, where remember how DC was the team that left out in terms of the well, I said support ratio race, but I meant decision day kind of time, and that they were actually in ninth position heading into the final game, and were there, but they got eliminated because yeah, no matter what happened on decision day, they would drop below the red line, even though they were in the playoffs. It was kind of a weird situation. We could potentially see that again, and the good news is that's going to be all soft with the way that San Diego is going to come into the league next season to make it a even amount of team. Now, in ninth position, we have Atlanta United, and again, while Toronto, it's been they have exceeded every expectation. Atlanta is the opposite. They have definitely like below par in terms of what their expectation is, and part of that is because they definitely sold off a lot of pieces, and that's kind of rightfully the so in terms of what they needed to do. This has always been a team that likes to develop pieces and eventually sold off a lot of pieces. But one of the big problem with doing that is that it's not easy to try to replace some of these players, and the fact that they were really quiet this summer transfer window, which is kind of a big bit of a surprise considering this is always a team that is always active in terms of the transfer window. But they have a 7-7-11 record and currently have 28 points. Again, coming into the season, the bare minimum was clearly making the playoffs, and the fact that they potentially are going to miss out on the playoffs, yeah, that's definitely a big red alarm, and especially with the way that Atlanta fans kind of got their wish of having Rob Valentino in charge of the team, and yes, Valentino definitely give them some new interim head coach boost at least in the first couple of games. A lot of the Atlanta games in the post Gonzalo Pineda era seems like it's the same. It seems like nothing, of course, has changed, and that just kind of shows you that this is bigger than just a coaching issue. This feels like it's an overall structure issue that Atlanta currently has, where they just clearly built a team that doesn't seem like it fits the structure of what they need to do. Now, obviously, there's also players that have underachieved a lot, and that's why they find themselves in this situation. And the fact that they also have gone through a period where they just completely got they bottom out with the way that there was at one point they only won like one game in 12, and the fact that they're still in the playoff race just to shows you how this Eastern Conference playoff race is kind of similar to last year Western Conference playoff race, where it feels like no one want to make it to the playoffs. But they scored 35 goals while allowing 36. They have a -1 goal differential. Their remaining game, they got the Galaxy on the road. That's not going to be easy. And then they go on the road to play against Charlotte. That's also not going to be easy, consider Charlotte has been very good at home. Then they play against Nashville, definitely a manageable game. Then they play against Inter Miami, which you would assume that's a manageable game too, because remember they did beat Inter Miami before. They go on the road to play against Inter Miami and was able to beat them. And I believe that was the game. I'm not sure if Messi did play in that one. I'm not sure that's the case, but still, that's impressive. The fact that they go on the road to play against Inter Miami and beat them on the row and beat them convincingly too. Then they go on the road to play against the Red Bulls before playing on the road against the Philadelphia Union. That could also be a big playoff 6-pointer, consider where the Union is sitting, as I'll talk about in just a bit. But they also play against Montreal. Then they play that home game against Montreal's at home. Then they play at home against the Red Bulls, and then on the final day of the season, they play against an Orlando City side that most likely this Orlando City side could be secure themselves in the playoffs. But there's no doubt that if that is the case, Orlando, if Atlanta is still in a playoff position, Orlando would love nothing more to knock their hated rival out of the playoffs. So yeah, again, this is going to be interesting to see how Atlanta is going to be looked for the rest of the season. One of the reasons I'm a little concerned is the fact that once again in this Leagues Cup they were pretty much a no-show. In this Leagues Cup, it's a disappointing kind of campaign, and after what we saw in terms of a disappointing Leagues Cup campaign, yeah, they didn't do so well in after that disappointing Leagues Cup campaign last season for the rest of the way. So yeah, there's a lot of question mark in terms of this Atlanta team, and especially with the way that they really gulped their team this this transfer window. I mean, it's great that they made a lot of money out of the transfer window, but the fact that they didn't reinvest it straight away tells me that they are hanging on to a little bit of an edge, and that there is a lot of team behind them that is hungry to take that ninth position. And one of those teams is the Philadelphia Union, and I argue I know, no, I already did a video talk about them, and I talked about how they have a murderous schedule in the latter part of the year. But honestly, there could be a case where they might be fine with the fact that they have a murderous road record, and that they can be a team that could really go on a bit of a run, because this team has done really well in terms of Leeds Cup, and that they pretty much also exceed what all Union fans think that they were going to do in Leeds Cup. And I would also say that they have looked like the Union of the old in terms of this Leeds Cup, and that it's no surprise that they could be have a chance to finally end the narrative of not getting over the hump and win a major trophy. But they have a 6-9-10 record. They currently have 27 points. They've scored 45 goals this season. Again, goal scoring is not an issue with this team. It's the defense. They conceded 42 goals. But with the way that Andre Blake is back in goal, it is no surprise that this Union team had looked so much better in the defense when Andre Blake is back in between net, and not to mention also healthy as well. And they have a +3 goal differential. Like I said, in the remaining schedule, it does look like a bit of a murderous row because they have to face against Columbus again after going to be facing them tomorrow in the semifinal of the Leeds Cup. Then they go on the road to play against the Red Bulls before going on the road to play against Messi and friends, that is Inter Miami, and then go on the road to play against NYCFC. But again, that seems like they could potentially not get anything out of it, but they've shown in this Leeds Cup that they can beat anyone. And this is a Union team that could look like the old Union team. They're not afraid of it anybody and could really rise up in the standings. And then after that, it gets a little easier. They face against DC at home before playing at home against Atlanta United. Then they go on the road to play against Orlando. Then they do go on the road to play against Columbus, and this is when things start to get tougher again. When they have to play the two Ohio team that is Columbus, and then of course playing at home on the final day of the season against FC Cincinnati, which they play them very tough. This season, and yeah, overall, I do have confidence that the Union should make it with the way that now that they're starting to be healthy again. Yes, I know they already started to kind of tore up a little bit of their core pieces with Jose Martinez no longer being with this team. But even then, I think they should, with the way that the players are now healthy once again, and the fact that the Union seems like it's hitting on all cylinders. It seems like Jim Curran has really found a stride with this team. This team is going to be dangerous down the stretch, and this is a team that could really make a run to a point where it's not about where you finish like right now in the standings. It's about how you do in terms of the stretch run. If you go into the playoff hot, that is one team you do not want to face. And the Union, I have a feeling they could be that team, even if they do have a really tough schedule for the remaining part. Then we look at Montreal. So for Montreal, I know it's easy to basically talk about the narrative of this team always tends to be like in this position right now where they're currently 11, 6, 9, and 10. They have 27 points. They've scored 34 goals and have a very bad 49 goals allow record with a -15 goal differential. And the easy narrative of this Montreal team is that yeah, they're gonna flirt for the playoffs, but they're not gonna make it at the end of the day, and that could still be true because this Montreal team, there is a lot of mess that is going on both internally and externally with this team. But looking at their remaining schedule, they got New England at home before going on the road to play against Cincinnati. Then they play at home against Charlotte before going on the road to play against New England. So those two New England games are going to be big for both the teams because, as I mentioned, New England is another team that is trying to get into the playoffs. Then they play against Chicago before playing against the Quakes at home before going on the road to play against Atlanta, going on the road against Charlotte, and then playing at home against NYCFC for the final day of the season. And when you look at the schedule, I mean, yes, there are a couple of tough teams that they have to face. Cincinnati on the road and playing Charlotte twice. Remaining is not going to be easy, but again, there are some winnable games, and there are games that they are directly facing against playoff rival. The New England ones is pretty big. The Chicago one is also pretty big, and even the one against Atlanta could be pretty big as well. But again, the narrative of this team has always been this team kind of get themselves in this position heading into decision day, but then they falter right in the end. So something tells me in that big crucial game against NYCFC, wherever they are in the standings, they're probably not going to get it done and get into the playoffs. Then we look at Nashville. So Nashville, obviously, one interesting thing about this team out of all these teams is that they are heading the stretch run with their new head coach BJ Callahan, and he didn't really impress that much doing the Leeds Cup run. But again, you have to give him time, though. There's not really a lot of time you can give him heading into this playoff push. But they have a 6-8-11 record. They have 27 or 26 points. That is, they scored 26 goals. Goal scoring has always been a problem for Nashville, and it's once again the problem. The defense has also started to become a problem too. 39 goals conceded now. They're pushing up to like 40 or 50 goals conceded, which is kind of unheard of for a Nashville team. And then they have a -13 goal differential. Now heading into the remaining schedule, they got Austin at home before going on the road to play against Orlando. Then they go on the road to play against Atlanta before playing at home against Chicago, Cincinnati, on the road against New England, at home against DC, on the road against NYCFC, and then on the road to face against Chicago to finish the season. So just like Montreal, there are some tough games out there, but there are definitely games that they're going to be playing against teams that are going to be fighting for playoff position. So good opportunity for them to get, of course, those points. But again, it's all about whether or not a BJ Callahan could get this team together. One thing that's kind of interesting about BJ Callahan and so far what he has done for Nashville is that he's kind of doing something a little bit opposite of what Gary Smith do. They don't really bunker it as much as they used to. They're now starting to actually play with possession and actually started to look more to dictate the plays and trying to be on the front foot. And again, I don't know if that, of course, is gonna work out because this is still a Gary Smith team at the end of the day. I mean, most of the pieces that BJ Callahan is working is still part of the old regime. So to switch the strategy straight away after this old regime has been kind of been in belief in terms of the tactics that Gary Smith has implemented for the past couple of years. It'll be interesting to see will it work out. Will that get the attack more often? But honestly, at the end of the day, the big storyline and really the guy that they really need to rely on, hope to turn up for them to make the playoffs got to be Hani Mukhtar. Hani Mukhtar's got to get going. It's been a very disappointing seasons for him, and it's been disappointing for the last two seasons. I mean, he's a guy that was supposed to be one of the best number 10 in the league, and he's been kind of vanished to air in the last year and a half. He has not really had a good run in for this Nashville team since they made it to the final last year in Leeds Cup, and if Hani Mukhtar can rediscover that good form, there could be a chance that Nashville could sneak into the playoffs. Then we look at DC. So for DC United, they also have a 6-8-11 record. They scored 35 goals while conceding 50 goals. Again, deep defensively, this is another team that has a lot of defensive problem this year, and they have a minus 15 goal differential. Looking at the remaining game, they got Dallas at home before playing on the road against Toronto, then playing on the road against Chicago before playing at home against NYCFC. Then they play on the road against Philly, playing at home against Columbus, playing on the road against Nashville, playing on the road against New England before finishing the season against Charlotte FC. So again, it's a moderate schedule. There are some tough teams that they have to play, but there are also teams that are going to be directly their rival when it comes to making the playoffs. The one thing that I am a little concerned about this DC team is obviously on the defensive front. The attack I don't think is an issue. I do think that they have enough on the attack. It's the defense that's been a huge issue, and also not to mention of having that problem of not being able to finish game and play a full 90 minutes. And also the other thing that I am a little concerned about DC is that they haven't been in really good run of form lately as well. I mean, yes, they kind of had an okay Leagues Cup run, but at the end of the day, they still in terms of league play they haven't looked good whatsoever for a while now. And you know when you're in a bad run of form and you're in a playoff race, that's not a recipe for success. Um, for this team. And again, there's no doubt that again, if you're a BC fans, I don't know what you feel about it. I mean, I don't know if you're happy with the progress that Corliss Sane has got to this team. I mean, in the beginning of the season, there was that promise to do so, but then it's just as the year goes along, you can start to see that the problems start to arise, and that I think the defensive issue has definitely been a big issue with this team because a pressing team like what DC is and the way that Troy Lisane likes to intimate press, that should not be a team that can see like 50 plus goal. That is going to be something that they absolutely need to address in the offseason. And then we look at the good old Chicago Fire. Oh yeah, so the Chicago Fire again. It feels like every single year we talk about them being in this playoff race. Although I will say that the narrative of the Fire is a little bit off compared to previous season. Usually around this time of the season, they really started to kind of near their peak. And then when September comes, yeah, you know this team is going to completely collapse. We saw it last year as well, and this year they can't avoid to do that because they're not in a good position in the playoff race. 6, 7, and 12 with 25 points. They scored 30 goals this season while allowing 42 goals and had a minus 12 goal differential. And in terms of some of their resort this season, there's been games where it's been very Chicago Fire as like, but there are also are games that are not very Chicago Fire as with them completing crazy comebacks and whatsoever. So the good news I will say about the Chicago Fire, and certainly for the fans, that is, they will not have Shaqiri to worry about for the rest of the season. His contract got terminated, and then not to mention their long time sporting director that they hate a lot. That is Greg Hitz. He's going to be out by the end of this season. With that being said, for the remaining schedule, they got NYCFC on the road. Then they play at home against Inter Miami before play at home against DC. Then they play at home against the Red Bulls before going on the road play against Nashville, go on the road to play against Montreal, playing at home against Toronto FC before going on the road to play against Charlotte, and then finish the season playing at home against Nashville SC. So in the beginning part of the schedule, it does get a little bit tough, but the back end is definitely going to get easier. But again, this is the Chicago Fire. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I really wish the narrative can maybe finally come to an end this year. I really hope that this is a chance that the Fire can say to themselves that, hey, we're not gonna look at what we did in the past couple of years of always collapsing in September, and especially again the latter part of the schedule. It's very manageable. They can get points, especially against teams that is in the playoff race. If they can win those games, there could be a chance that they could get in through the playoffs. Now, will they get themselves clinch the playoffs very early? Hell no. This is the Chicago Fire. They won't get clinched in the playoffs very early, but they'll definitely be fighting for the until the final day, and then that game against Nashville could be a playoff implication compared can consider where they're going to be at the end of the season. And then finally, we got the team that is currently at the bottom of the Eastern Conference. But one thing I will say about New England, despite the fact that they are 7 points behind, and you think that that is very far. Well, actually, they're only 5 points below the red line right now because I keep looking this as the red line and eighth position. It's ninth position. That's the cutoff line, but they're only 5 points behind. And like I said, the thing that New England has over a lot of these teams that doesn't have that advantage, they have games in hand. They have two games in hand. They have a 7-2-14 record with 23 points. They have an awful goal scoring record of 23 free goals. Again, goal scoring has been a problem this season. It's been the problem. I mean, it took them for a long time to even reach the double digit mark in terms of goal scoring. And the defense is the same thing. 47 goals conceded this season with a minus 24 goal differential. Now, looking at their busy remaining schedule because they have a lot of games in hand. They got a very busy schedule and busy September. And again, that could work both ways. It can work in favor of you because you do have those game in hand and you can make up those points and climb the standings. But it can work against you because when you play so many games at short amount of time, the fatigue could get into your squad. And knowing that this is a New England team that once again for the second year in a row are pretty much cursed by the injury bug. They don't have a lot of depth to, and they could maybe run out of gas before we even get into the stretch run. But first, they go on the road to play against Montreal before going on the road to play against RSL. Then they play at home against St. Louis before going back on the road to play against Orlando. Then they play at home against Montreal before going on the road to play against Charlotte. Then they play at home against Nashville before going on the road to play against Houston. Then they play at home against DC before going on the road against Columbus. So there's a bit of a pattern where they're going to be at home and on the road, at home and on the road, at home on the road, and then they finish the season on the road to play against Inter Miami. So again, another thing I will say about New England is that despite the fact that they do have those game in hand, and there are some manageable teams that they can beat, there also are some really tough team as well. I mean, going on the road to play against Columbus and Miami, that last two game that is probably the worst case scenario for New England has. Where if you're gonna have a tough schedule down the stretch, at least have that tough schedule in the beginning, not at the end. And that's unfortunately something that New England has to face. So yeah, again, I don't know if they have enough to do so. Consider again, this team is injured to hell right now, and that with just so many games in such a short amount of period, are they going to have enough in the tank to get it done, even if they do have those game game in hand as well. But there you have it. That is pretty much it in terms of looking at the Eastern Conference playoff race. And again, these standings can really change in these next couple of weeks. Won't be surprised if some of these teams could be right up here. Some of these teams could go as far as below here. there's really nothing in it when it comes to looking at the Eastern Conference playoff race. It is a jumble of mess, and I will not be surprised. It could come down to the final day. We've seen it before in terms of exciting playoff races. I think the Western Conference for the past couple of years have always had the most excited playoff race, but this year when you look at the Western Conference, it's a little bit more spread out compared to last year. This year when it comes to the Eastern Conference playoff race, it is much more exciting. And again, I would not be surprised. It's going to go down to the wire. There's going to be a lot of teams that's going to be jogging for position. And as I said also in the beginning of the video, it also feels like it's a playoff race where no one wants to make it to the playoff. A lot of these teams has not been able to put a lot of good result in a string, and if that continued to be the case, we could go into that stretch one where all these teams could still be in fight for the last two spot in terms of the playoffs in the East. But there you have it. Let me know in the comments below what do you think of this video, and let me know in the comments below who do you think is going to make it to the playoffs at the end of the season in the current standing, who's going to be left out. But either way, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure to like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.